All right, welcome. Apologies for the slight technical difficulties there, but welcome to this live broadcast. Thrilled to see you all, and as you can see, we are live from NYC, and it's Challenge Episode 2, and indeed, the whole thing and the whole episode of 2 is being brought to you from my iPhone. So thrilled to have you all here, and very excited to kick off this second live show. And we've got a bunch of questions from you, which is fantastic. So we're going to be answering all of those as well. And also, I want to talk about today's topic. And today's topic has a lot to do with the start of the challenge, and it's choosing your market. And I want to talk about some of the fundamental changes that we've made when it comes to picking your market and the way you should think about it. Because when we started the challenge all those years ago, here, in fact, about 10 kilometers that way, literally straight up the street, was where the challenge began in 2005, where I got the idea in Trump Tower. And then market selection, it wasn't so necessary for you to be interested in your market. You could easily create a viable business in a market that was that you particularly weren't interested in. So, I was involved in sites like, how to have a Cinderella wedding on a pauper's budget, or how to trout fish in streams. Those sorts of... I've never fished for trout in a stream. Certainly haven't fly fished for trout in a stream. And I have certainly never had much to do with planning a wedding. Not something that I'm interested in. Fast forward to today, and you just can't do that anymore. And I want to explain the reasons why you can't do that anymore, and why I think it's ultimately much, much better, much more sustainable. And when we think about what the promise of what we're trying to do here is, when we think about that promise, I think it absolutely gives very, very, positive and very specific things that we can do in terms of looking at choosing and picking your market. And indeed, it's a huge potential roadblock for a lot of challengers over the years have literally did not pass go, did not collect $200 because they literally couldn't make a decision on a market. And I think that decision, that market decision, really is all about, those key, elements, if you will, of your understanding of the market and everything to do with it. And so, when we looked at that market, when we looked at that challenge market, it was, as I said, you didn't have to worry about it all. Now, because you have to dedicate some time, you have to put in some energy, you have to put in some effort, I think it's very, very important for you to look at the type of market and what you're involved in. And it absolutely needs to be a market that you're passionate about, right? Makes sense. So what do we need to think about? So, in the old days, we were worried about, did the market exist? Well, the first thing, and we talk about this in the challenge, and it's most important that you understand this, is Dale's Law, which is every market is now a market. And I'm not going to go into detail because we talk about a lot of that in Module 1. But that is a very, very important thing, is that picking that market used to be tricky because those markets there didn't exist. But as we know now, every market's a market. If you can make money in piano stool restoration, if you can make money in pottery valuation, anything is possible. Anything is possible. I think what people worried about and why they didn't pick and dive into a particular market was that they were worried about, well, what if I pick the wrong one? What if I try to commit myself and I go down the wrong one? This is a particular issue for those of you who took a Kolbe test and you were a high fact finder or a high follow through person. Typically, you want to be assured that what you're doing doesn't waste your time and it makes sense. And so picking a market, picking the thing that you want to create your business in, that seems to be the most fundamental decision and the one that you're most desperate to get right. But how do you know you're going to be right until you get into that market? All right, that is the key question here. And of course, the truth is you just can't. You just don't know whether you're going to be right or not. You don't know. Nobody knows. But you can be certain that if you're interested in a particular market, there'll be 1,000 other people that are interested in that market. And as we talked about last week, those, if 1,000 people spend $100 with you, you've got a business. And that's pretty darn exciting. So that's not an issue anymore. Another, I think, potential turn off in market selection, and again, this particularly goes to, sorry, I seem to be picking on the high fact finders, don't worry, we'll get to the others shortly, but those high fact finders and high follow through, where they worry that you have to be the face of your market, you personally have to be individually the niche. Now, as we go through the existing weeks, and indeed, I don't know how far you've got into the challenge material yet, but we talk about that, right? And so there's always a way of communicating to your market, which is something that's very appropriate to you. And that in itself is very exciting. Now, I apologize, I'm very yellow, but I've got a yellow lamp up here. So there you go. Just looks as though I've had a very, very, very bad turn at a Celeria, but that's okay. So that's, people quite rightly are worried that, well, what if I put all this energy into this challenge and the business doesn't work, the marketing doesn't work? Well, if you follow the guidelines in Module 1, Module 1's guidelines are very good at showing you how to eliminate a market that's not going to be suitable for you. We can never know whether a market's going to be right or not. We just don't know. We don't know. We can't know. It's impossible until you get in there and start doing things. You just don't know. But you can figure out where you're going to waste your time. So that is a big part of it. Let's see if I can do a change here. Let's have a look. Oh, look at that. It worked. So what are we going to do? What are we going to consider? What are the things that we need to think about when we're picking a market? I think first and foremost, it's got to be something that you're excited about, that you're interested in. Dare I say it, you're passionate about. And as I said, you never had to be that case. Now, I've met a lot of challengers over the years who literally say to me, and you could be you on this call, there's just nothing that I get that excited about. There's nothing that I'm really interested in. And that's a shame, but I've had enough people say it to me now that it's a really big deal and it's something that we need to talk about today. What I say when I get that question is, well, what did you used to enjoy? What was something that you enjoyed? Maybe you did as a kid or a hobby, or could have been anything like that. Because why? Why am I saying you have to be excited? Why do you have to be interested? Why do you have to be passionate about a particular market? It's because you're going to spend time in there, okay? You're going to spend time in there. And now, the time we're talking about is not 40 hours a week, every day or more. There's nothing like that. But it is a commitment. You're going to need to give this stuff a year, right? You're going to need to be involved in a marketplace for at least 12 months. Now, it's funny, I got quite a bit of feedback over my doctor comments, and I sort of breezed over it in last week's episode, and I wanted to drill down into it here because I think it helps put into context what I'm talking about, the amount of work that I'm asking you to do as part of the challenge compared to a doctor and what they're all about. Now, let's think about the doctor's story. The doctor will spend, and I wrote these down. So the average degree in America, and it's an average one, not a high good school, but an average one, $169,000 it will cost them in terms of college fees. Now, of course, by the time they pay that off, they will have paid, when you include interest, $416,000. And they've literally spent 7 years in what they call foundation and internships as part of that process. So they've not only done pre-med and gone to college for that, but then for the next 7 to 10 years before they get into independent practice themselves. So, they've gone a huge amount of time. But people say, well, it's great because they earn so much money. It's fantastic, right? Funny you should say that. People didn't believe me when I gave the figures. So I thought I would get this up here for you. Have a look at this. This is the post their degree years. These are the averages right up through the 8th year income for the United States. And you can see here at the 8th post-MD year, 64,000 is the average wage of a physician in their 8th year. It's not until they get into individual practice or they specialise, which happens after 8 years. And that's after college, 8 years after college, before they get that amount of money. Now, I don't know about you, but that is flabbergasting to me. And there's something worse about this, if you like. There's something that is perhaps even more. Well, it's hideous. It's sad, right? And it really is sad for somebody to even contemplate getting into medicine right now. They've actually been preparing that since they were probably 10, right? They don't have lives. Kids who go into medicine, whose parents typically suggest they go into medicine, they don't have lives from the age of 10 because not only are they doing school, they're doing tutoring and after work school and all sorts of other non-social activities. They haven't had a life. Through high school, they've missed their teenage years to focus on being in that top 0.001% because the perception is, the bill of goods that they're being sold is that this is a profession that makes money and it's a profession that can help. And yet you look at the most recent Atlantic article and they talk about the number of doctors being crushed by paperwork. And it's 10 years before they start earning the average, the average wage of a doctor after 10 years goes up to over $100,000, $160,000. So why do I tell this story about doctors? Because, hey, bless them and what they do. When I say to you, give me 12 months on an online business, and how much are you paying for the challenge right now? Zero. And I can't make my $100,000 and just put in a couple of days' work. I have to do more than 6 sessions of 30 minutes. Terrible. I reckon it's a bloody better deal than being a doctor. And think of the hour, like in those first 10 years, the hours are insane. Their average hours are 60 hours a week. When you realise that, when you realise what some of these, incredible occupations that you think, you get the money and everything, it's a long, long time. So being involved in doing the challenge, is it really that big an ask? Is it really that much to ask that you put aside half an hour each day to build your business, to take action every single day? I don't think so. Let's just have a final look at these figures again. That's after they've paid accrued a debt of, on average, not the highest amount, not the lowest amount, $169,000 of debt. Now, of course, I am happy if you want to send your checks to me and feel better about yourself and send me the $169,000. I will personally tutor you, no problem whatsoever. And we'll earn more than $50,000 in our first 12 months. How about that for a deal? No, not many takers. I understand. That's okay. I don't take it personally. But do you see the inconsistency here? And that's what I really wanted to ram home. So how does this relate back to picking your market? It's very simple, right? By working and starting in your market, particularly you high fact finders, particularly you high follow throughs who are really concerned, you don't want to attempt activities unless you know the outcomes. And that's fine, right? There's lots of, for example, open heart surgery. I would really, really enjoy people who are high fact finders and high follow through who are absolutely certain of their ability to conduct open heart surgery on me, speaking of doctors. Very, very keen for that to happen. I don't want a high quick start YOLO type surgeon who goes, oh, let's get in there and see what we can find, right? We don't want that. So there's plenty of places for that. It's not a bad thing. It's just a natural thing. But when you're an entrepreneur, you don't get those, you don't get those ability to do that. So I wanted to mention that. In fact, Stuart here, I've just got a question popped up here on the iPad. I'll answer this one now. Now, Stuart says here, what do you think the traits, if any, successful students have that the others who don't seem to make it don't have? I think there's a lot, and we try to talk about this a lot through the entire challenge, Stuart. But to me, I think this freezing on choosing a market is a big deal, right? It's a big deal. Whereas the people who just get in there feet first, because what if your first idea doesn't work? Who cares? It doesn't matter. You've learned how to do it. And here's the deal. Here's the terrifying thing. 93%, according to the most recent Stanford study, of the ideas that you start with are not the ideas that are ending up going to be successful. It's a huge mouthful here. Get ready for your $2 term of the day. It's the theory of deliberate and emerging strategies. Don't even worry about it. But what you need to understand is unless you take action and implement, in fact, we might dedicate an episode to this very theory because it really is fascinating. But unless you take action in a niche, and you get in the field and you start getting feedback and results, particularly in this day and age, particularly now, that to me is a fundamental. Because if you're theorizing and if you're just doing this and watching me and getting the educational crack cocaine, and sure, of course, there's the sex appeal and the animal magnetism, I get that. But if you're not actually testing, if you're not actually conducting experiments, that's a huge deal. The other thing, really, another classic sort of symptom of students that getting over them, it's sort of like, just let's not do it the way they're being taught. Let me give my tweak to this. Let me do my little special version of it. Yet people who are successful tend to follow the processes as they're put out, and once they've implemented them and they've implemented them successfully, then's the time to experiment more. So that to me is that. The third element, and we talked about this a little bit last week, is scrambling, is cramming. People who make this a daily practice and a habit, make it, even like I said, 30 minutes a day, are way more likely to successfully build a business than people who cram on a weekend and try to bam in 6 hours work on their business on a Saturday or Sunday because that's the time they have available. It's just the stats are incontrovertible. The people who break it down, chunk it down, get in the market every single day, conduct tests every week, they're the ones that tend to be the most successful. So there's that. All right. Before we go on to more questions, I want to do Book of the Week. Dun, 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 dun. Here we are. And the Book of the Week, as you can see, yes, there. Personal Kanban. We mentioned it now. Of course, you can't see. Typically, when I'm doing these broadcasts, you can see my Kanban board behind me. And a lot of people asked me last week what that was. And the inspiration for that was this book, Personal Kanban. And it's a fabulous book, and it really looks at taking those Scrum and Agile principles, which making dramatic changes to the way we work. And again, we could spend hours on. Indeed, we've got an entire huge course on all of this stuff, because it really is comprehensive. But the way businesses are working are fundamentally changing. But a lot of you, and this is why I recommend this book first for a lot of challenges, is that you don't have a team at the moment. You're a one-person band. And I think the approach in Personal Kanban is just fabulous for starting to get focused. And if you are a high quick start, low follow through, if you've got a low follow through under 6, then you will love this book, Personal Kanban. That is my book of the week. A couple of the key concepts that I love about this book. One is treating tasks as flow as opposed to tasks as things that you check off in a list. By being able to visualize, using a board to visualize what you're doing, all of a sudden you actually know what's going on. There's a thing called the Zeigarnik effect, which is talked about in the book. And that Zeigarnik effect there's a couple of things. One is that if you've got things that you're kind of keep track of in your head, you are literally burning energy. You are burning calories. Every single thing that you're trying to keep track of in your head consumes calories, which makes it much harder for you to be able to focus. It makes it much harder for you to get into a flow state where the really amazing creative breakthroughs happen, because your brain's trying to keep track of all these things you've got to remember. By visualizing that, by putting that up on a board, you're able to free up all of that energy, because the mind literally sees it on this board, which you can't avoid. See, the problem is for most of us high quick starts and low follow through types is that we'll write it down, we'll put it in a notebook or something, and then we'll never open the notebook again. Right? It's another reason why, I created, and in fact, a lot of this book goes to explain why we created the Achiever app here. Because of that, you need that visualization. You need that fundamental approach. Anyway, the book is just fantastic at explaining these concepts. It's superbly well written, and it's perfect for people who are individuals. If you've tried organizing and it just hasn't stuck for you, and if you've tried all sorts of to-do apps and programs and maybe a file of facts or a day runner or day timer back in the day, you might have tried setting up getting things done or something like that, and nothing has ever stuck for you, this, I think, is a miracle. And indeed, it's the basis. Personal Kanban, I think there are things that as entrepreneurs that we need to not so much add, but things that we can actually subtract from this process, but it's pretty darn good place to start. So that is my book recommendation of the week, Personal Kanban. I think it's a fabulous book. Okay, so let's come back to here. I'm loving this, loving the ability to do these scenes and put up these images just through the phone, which is fantastic. Let's go through and answer some questions. So I've got one here from Sandy, and she says, look, you talk a lot about running experiments, and I get the gist of it. Could you give some more detailed examples of some key experiments we need to run in our niche and how we might go about it? Well, it's interesting. There are only 6 areas of focus for experiments in a business. And one of those, for example, is traffic, right? Getting traffic experiments. So figuring out and conducting, will Facebook allow me to get people to my opt-in page? Does YouTube placement videos work? What about Google AdWords campaign? Does that work? What's that focus? All of those sorts of things are individual experiments. And ideally, you should be conducting an experiment every single week. And we only need to, there's nothing that we do that really takes more than a week in our business. So you can be thinking and looking at these conducting experiments all the time. And I can tell you that the person who conducts the most experiments in your market will win. right? Because they're getting knowledge and certainty. The trouble with conducting experiments, right, and this is, I'm speaking to you, high fact finders and high follow-throughs, is you don't know what the result of that experiment is going to be. Now, a sort of high quick start, low follow through, we're a bit YOLO, let's go, let's see what happens. And that's actually a very handy thing to have in the experiments. The trouble is we tend not to learn the lessons of those experiments, right? We tend not to want to be tied down, and we want to follow those procedures again and again. We'd rather invent something new again instead of going through and actually implementing the thing that worked in the first place. But that is part of the process, right? Part of the fun. So that to me is, experiments. Traffic, for example, there are only 6 areas where you need to conduct focus in your business. There's only 6. So when you're looking at your board, and what I do is when you're looking visually at all those activities that you're undertaking, if you're not taking some sort of test or experiment in one of those 6 areas, that's going to cause you, you're not going to move forward. You're not actually building your business in any way, shape or form. And that's where the problems start. So it's a great question. Thank you very much for that. Jeff says, hi Ed, I'm just starting out and was wondering, what would you say are the top 5 mistakes people make when trying to start an online business? Well, I'll refer you back to my answer with Stuart with the traits of successful students, because it's not dissimilar, those fundamental sort of errors. But let's look at the technical side of things, and it's sort of mistakes, or one mistake, but people taking with the challenge, they get stuck on something that doesn't work, and they get bullheaded about it. It's like me with broken technology. If anything of my technology is not working, I will just sit. I can't do anything else. I can't function until it's fixed. Right? I have a real problem with it. It's just who I am. But it's silly, really, because what I should do when I'm doing that is, if I can't get it working in 30 minutes, I should walk away and do something else and let my brain process what's going on. And so what typically happens in the challenge is people get stuck, particularly on a technical thing. Now, we've tried to eliminate most of the technical stuff. It's never been easier to build your own business, particularly if you've got the right tools. But if you get stuck, with one of those tools or something, and you can't make it happen, typically people get in this loop, and they may spend 6 hours trying to fix it. And what does that do? Your enthusiasm and willpower bank account just plummets through the floor, right? You've got nothing left. And so when you try to saddle up for the next day after having all of that, exerting all that willpower, you've got nothing left in the tank. And so what happens? You go off and watch Housewives of Atlanta, and that's it. The challenge is gone for another year. So you're much better off, and you'll have much more success. And that's why, set a timer. Set a timer. It's so important for you to set a timer, and by using a timer and giving yourself 30 minutes to solve the problem, if you can't solve it, then walk away, get up and take a break. Don't get stuck with it, because all you're doing is spinning wheels. It's literally like a car that's bogged, and sometimes you just have to wait for the bog to dry so you can get enough traction for it to get out. Same deal here with the challenge. So that would be another, inverted commas, mistake, I think, that people make. The other one is just consuming this, as I say, educational crack cocaine style. Like, let's form some mastermind, let's form some groups, and let's get in some forums, and let's talk about the challenge, instead of actually doing the challenge. You just like to talk about it. Now, it's nice, and it's nice for us to all be friends and all that sort of thing, but that doesn't build you a niche style business. That doesn't help pay the bills. That doesn't help put kids through college, doesn't help give the freedom for wherever you want to live and wherever you want to work, whether it's in a hotel room in New York City or it's an office in Moonee Ponds. It doesn't matter where I am. We can do what we do. That's what we're aiming for. And if we're just reading about it and we're not acting on it and we're just consuming, then that's a real problem to me. That there is a really, really big deal. Okay, Kenneth asks, since there's so much cool stuff, competing for our attention, for our market, what can we do to create valuable content that gets and keeps our market's attention? When you're starting out, the key to creating good content is creating a lot of content, and eventually some of it will stick and be good. And over time, you will further develop your taste and your skills, and the ratio of good stuff to bad stuff will improve. And it's only by putting that content out in the market that will because here's the thing, you can't tell whether a piece is good or bad until you've submitted it to the market. Now that's quite scary for a lot of people, and they don't want to put their content out there because they're worried it's not good enough. Well, you're never going to know. And the only way you're going to get better is if you get feedback and you get interaction with your marketplace, because every time you put something out into the marketplace and it gets some sort of reaction, guess what? You've learned something, right? You've been taught a lesson, and that's incredibly powerful. But if you don't publish to your market, if you don't put it out there, you're never going to learn those lessons. You're never going to get that increase of certainty. Even if it's a negative reaction, you've learned how to not to do something, right? And so for me, that really is a big deal. Okay, so that's something that's that really is an issue. So what about all this cool stuff competing for attention? One of the things that, we do this with Achieve a Formula, is that when you realise there's only 6 things to be focusing on to your business, and being able to visualise that on a board of some kind, like a Kanban board, all of a sudden you start seeing these patterns, right? And that really helps you stick to it, because we all want to do the right thing. We've all got excellent intention, but often the way we're wired just isn't conducive to focusing on particular things unless we've got visual scoreboards and reminders, alerts and alarms all set up. It's just natural. It's just the way it is. And that is, such I suppose, a key element of all of this. So it's very important, if you are a high quick start like me, low follow through, it's important to have variety there. And the way you get variety is to be very focused. But rather than trying to do 3 things at once, you focus and do one thing, ship one thing, but then that gives you the ability to ship another. And particularly when you start working with a team, all of a sudden that becomes even better, because you can be the one who's creating and thinking about new ideas, and that's what really rocks and floats your particular boat. And that is how you get that variety, that need for variety, along with the need of making things a process. And the challenges are very, completely unapologetic about getting you to follow a whole series of processes, because by doing that, you get into the habit of working on your business each day. And that, I think, is really, really super important. Nirashini asks, or Shania, hey Ed, thank you so much for all the brilliant info. You are welcome. I am loving the course, and all of it is so far is new to me. What do I do if a market is new mums? Very soon they become old mums, and the products I sell won't interest them. Won't the list building be irrelevant in this case? Take care, and thanks again, Nero. Very good question, because there are 2 types of market. And the way I've always described them is, one is the wedding market and the other type is the golfing market. There are 2 styles of market. Now, the wedding market is just like new mothers, okay, in the sense that from the very moment you're engaged to the final you get home from your wedding, that 1 or 2 year period, you are intensely focused on that wedding, intensely, right? But the very day after, you want nothing to do with wedding dresses, reception centres, menus, party bands, and anything else ever again, right? You just don't, right? It was an awesome experience, but that's it. So do those markets suck? No, they don't, because there's a constant flow of new people. And yes, you still must build a list before you think I'm going to let you off that obligation. No way, because you want to be, for the 1 to 2 years that they are involved in that activity, you need to be a part of that, and you need to be able to work with those people, and you need to be able to build that up. And most importantly, you want to be able to, because the best marketing we can get, remember, is that viral personal recommendation. So if somebody says, oh, I used this service, or I read this ebook, or watched this video and it was fantastic, you've got to get it too. People will do that, right? They'll go and do it, which is awesome. So that, to me, is a big part of this as well. So that is the other. Now, for completeness of the concept, the other market is the golf market, because somebody can start being a golfer and they'll continue golfing for as long as they're swinging. So, Ed, why wouldn't you just focus on those type of markets? Well, there's goods and bads with those markets as well. Once a person reaches a certain level, when they get out of that beginner stage, a sign of mastery of any topic is when you start editing. When you're getting all enthusiastic and learning about a topic, you're buying stuff, and you're buying equipment, and you're doing all sorts of cool things. And as you tip from learner into starting to master, that mastery is all about editing. And so you start getting rid of a lot of stuff, and you don't buy a new set of clubs every time you've got a swing problem and all those sorts of things. So swings and roundabouts, both are good markets. Both, job one is still list building, but you have to also acknowledge that, look, time passes on. And that's right. But the good news is people are getting engaged and married every single day. So there's a constant flow. You've got a river of opportunity there. Okay, Bill says, in your opinion, where is internet marketing heading in the next 5 to 10 years? Well, that's a big question, and I love those sort of questions. I won't go into all of the sorts of things, but I'll give you a couple that I think are very important from a marketing perspective in particular. One is, I think, is the trend towards messaging. If I know one thing about direct marketing history, is that the most successful direct marketing, the most successful marketing, action-based marketing methods, not brand building, but actually getting people to do something, go to a website, give an email, buy something. The way to communicate to that market has always been a trailing indicator of the most common way you have spoken with your friends of the time. So if we go back, of course, the letter was the number one way of corresponding with your friend as we look at the turn of the century. And then as we get on, the telephone became important. Mail, of course, has always been important, but it's always, direct mail is always a trailing indicator. And of course, when the internet arrived, all of a sudden we were able to list build, but it was a trailing indicator. So how are we, and of course you communicate with your friends via email was the way you did it. Now, if I was to ask you all today, how do you communicate with your friends and people who are closest to you, I know the answer will be texting. And so that, to me, as a student of marketing history, says that by definition, direct marketing will go to that messaging. And I think, I think that's something that we're very conscious of, and understanding smart push notifications and things like with our, things like with our Achiever app, that's all run on that basis of the notifications that you get are the same sort of notifications that you would get if a friend was pinging you. And that, to me, is a very, very powerful trend. So I think that is, I'll give you one tonight. That to me is one that we're very excited about. And then everything else we've been talking about in terms of the new technology. It's insane to be thinking that here I am in New York City, and I am speaking to you guys on and doing all of this switching and changing to different graphics and all of these sorts of things. It is absolutely insane. Hospital room, pantless shots. It's insane that I can be doing all of this from a phone, right? Crazy town that you could be doing all that. Yet here we are. And that, to me, is very exciting. And, if I blow my own trumpet just for a little bit, as unusually as that is, I must admit, as humble as I am, I think one of the reasons people like staying on my email list and following me on Twitter and going to the Facebook page and doing all the YouTube and doing what you're doing now is because I'm pretty good at picking those trends and what's important and what's not important. Because often that's as, if not more important, in understanding what's just a flash in the pan that's not going to be any use to anybody. That to me is a particularly keen thing as well. So there you go. There's one. I'm sure there's a lot. And here's the other thing, and this, I think it was a Tony Robbins I heard it from, but anyway, it was, people wildly overestimate what they can do and achieve and what will happen from a technology perspective in a year. And they widely underestimate what can be done in 5 to 10 years. Just look at 10 years ago, as we're talking here, this device, the smartphone category as we know it today, did not exist and wouldn't exist for another year. Insane when you think about it. Facebook wasn't around. YouTube wasn't around. YouTube was. It just had started. Right, so massive changes, massive in that time. So that's the if I can leave you with some wit and wisdom there, that would be it. Betty asks, if we're starting from scratch and don't have a product, how do we test? Well, first of all, you've got to start obviously understanding your market, and that gives the opportunity to test. Testing is most easily equated with things like traffic tests and opt-in page tests and did my product sell tests. They're the obvious ones. But I believe tests is a very broad church. And indeed, often when I'm working with private clients, a test will be something like, hey, let's get 5 people in from Craigslist and show them this new user interface and see if it's going to be useful for them because they've met particular criteria, and we'll give them a $50 Amazon gift card for coming in and spending 30 minutes looking at our interface. That's as legitimate a test. Understanding a classic one and very important from Module 1 and Module 2 is experiments which uncover the market's pains, gains, and jobs to be done. Crucial testing. So testing doesn't necessarily mean selling the product and checking conversion rates. There are a lot of other tests. And we try to phrase everything as a test, right? It becomes a question. If you go from, what would kill this business to, well, if it's traffic, well, how do we create that traffic? We'll test YouTube placements and see if that works, for example. That's our experiment. That's our test. Just as important is if we don't really know the pains, gains, and jobs to be done in our market well enough, then it's totally legit to say, okay, well, let's create a series of interviews. Let's go to a trade show and interview a whole bunch of people and see what the story is, right? You have to do your dues. There's no question about it, right? You have to do your dues. And I think the challenge is as good a way as any is starting to do that. And, like I said, if you find yourself empty, Robert McKee, the very cranky screenwriting instructor, people go to his seminars all over the world. He was talking about writer's block, and he was saying writer's block is just a lack of knowledge on a particular subject. Like, you just have to do more research. I think the same applies here when you're thinking about your market and your product and all those sorts of things. You have to just do the research to get the understanding for the market. No Name. Hello, No Name. What all is included in your mobile rig for doing live shows with just your smartphone? How can I do this? Let me try something here. Bros gold. Yeah, baby. Here we go. Smile. Okay, so let's have a look here. This is a bit meta. But there you can see my phone is on a special, well, not that special, but it's a iPhone stand. They sell these kits in the Apple stores all around the world, which has this little special portable tripod. Oh, actually, well, I'm pointing at the real one, you idiot. That tripod down the bottom there is a Manfrotto tripod. This clamp that that I'm using to hold the phone, I keep pointing to the real phone, is a specially designed clamp, which is great. That's all right. I'm missing the poor boy. Oops. There. So they're the different things. It's very simple, and I've just got a cord in. I don't even have. Where are we? Let's make sure I go back here. Don't even have any of the other stuff there as well, which is really, really cool. I've just seeing all the chat here. I didn't even see that before. How sweet is that? Cool. And the app that I use is Wirecast. In fact, I'm going to take a photo of that. Hang on. Here we go. Okay. There we go. Smile. I'll put up some photos later, which is very good. Okay, so let's go back to these questions. So it's super simple. It's very simple, simple rig. Ed, is there any value in trying to tap into foreign markets like the Latin American market? Of course, yes, more than ever. Hang on a second. Just, what am I doing here? Stay. Where are we? There we are. Tick. And just tap that. There we are. Now we're cooking with gas. Wow, this comment stuff on the side is awesome. So what we're saying, foreign market, yes, this stuff works brilliant. One of the most successful challenges I know focused on building products in Romania, and of course, earning $2,000 or $3,000 in Romania was living like a king. So, absolutely, you can do all of those sorts of things. You can absolutely do all of that. So it's absolutely, if you've got a particular skill in a foreign language, again, what has changed? When we started the challenge initially, you couldn't do all of that sort of stuff, right? You just couldn't, right? But now you can because of smartphones. All of a sudden, a lot more of those markets have opened up. And indeed, they're all phone-based. So you have to think about when you're creating your product to make sure that it's all useful in terms of on the phone. So there you have it. No Name, I wonder if it's the same No Name, says, how do you decide what the best market product match is and then supply that economically? Well, you're starting to talk product there, which is a little bit down the track. And we talk about that in the challenge, right? So walk before you can run. Get the understanding of the market first. So that is a big part of that as well, okay? So that makes sense as well. Okay. Oh, Lord, what is that? Look at the rockin' music that I've got going here. It is terrifying. Okay, I'm just going to have a look back through some of these chat comments and then we'll call it a day. We've got a question. In your videos, you use the market example of ukulele and violin. Now, in the live episode, you use the market example of golfers, people getting married. I see ukulele more as a product than a market. Well, people who play ukulele is part of that market. Right, that is part of what they're doing. So that the learning to play ukulele is a part of the market. So that, and just as learning violin is a market, people who want to play violin is a market. Now there are definitely many different sub niches in those markets. Just like in the golf example that we talked about, makes total sense. Let's have a look. I think I've got a couple more questions sent in from John here. Oh, yes, I have. Okay. Leah asks, none of the three markets I'm considering have any ClickBank products I would be willing to promote. They do buy physical products I can recommend as an affiliate and subscribe to online memberships for them in magazines. Is this a problem, or should I give them a try? You should absolutely give them a try. That is a great way to do it, right? It's a fantastic way to do it. There's often, ClickBank is just one example. What are we testing? We want to test whether the market's interested, whether they're spending money, whether they're doing all of those sorts of things. So that's completely legit, right? That's totally, even selling, hey, even though you don't make any money on a book recommendation for Amazon, you get a lot of data and you learn something. Are people spending money on this? People are asking about recommending a push notification service. We built our own. Sorry, because they just don't exist, like an sort of an Aweber or sort of thing. And the thing about push notifications, they have to be associated with an app. You just can't send a push notification just like an email, right? That's like a text message. You need to associate it with an app. So that's what we did, and we built a whole push notification service as part of Scriptcast and Magcast. So that's what we did there. Asborn, I wonder if it's the Asborn. Hopefully it is, and if it is, welcome. Hi Ed, my online business idea is an app in the leadership development area, but I can't code. Actually, I don't think it's the Asborn that I'm thinking about, because he can code. I can learn to code, but should I outsource or find a code founder? All of those are important, but not right now. Because as long as you've got pen and paper, you can design out, and this is what we've done in the challenge. And as you get further along in the challenge, you'll realize this with product design. It's not about the code. It's not about the tech. You can absolutely find people to do all of this stuff for you, right? You can absolutely find somebody to do all of this stuff for you. So don't stress about that now. Understand that, if you can think about it, then you can do it. And that is an exciting thing, right? That makes super sense. So at the moment, don't stress about it. Design it up. Think about it, but think about it from the customer perspective. And this is what we ask you to do in the challenge.